Hi everyone, welcome along to DigiShift 63, which is a review of 2022. So we're into the festive period now, which is why I have this awful jumper on. We're going to be looking back at the last year, what has changed in digital data and design, what's benefited the third sector, and we're going to look at what might happen in 2023. So we're going to be encouraging call participants to share their digital wins, the big ones and the small ones today. And we're also going to be joined by three special guests. We're going to have Stu Pearson, who's Head of Business Delivery at Citizens Advice Stockport, Oldham, Rochdale and Trafford. We're going to have Thiago Carmois, who's MD at Passion for Social, an online comms expert, and Alice Kershaw, who's Head of Digital Transformation with the Wildlife Trust. So we'll hear from our three speakers and then we'll get a chance for everyone to share their own thoughts and we'll have a general discussion. And as usual, we'll be finishing up around about 11 AM today. Right, so we're going to hear from Stu first of all, so I'll hand over to you just now, Stu.
Thanks, Ross. I just feel that we've gone from the COVID crisis straight into the cost of living crisis. So, you know, it's how has digital helped us? You know, what we learned, and I think one of the biggest shocks for me in 2022 is how reliant I was on Twitter. You know, and obviously Elon Musk took over and it was like, well, do we abandon Twitter? And it was like, well, actually I've collated a great group of people across the charity sector who I learn a lot from, like Maddie, Ross and John. And it was a bit scary, really, thinking, well, actually I've become really reliant on this platform. And if it was to go away, I've got no control of this, you know, where do I go? And people were saying, oh, let's try Mastodon, let's try Hive. And it was like, well, it was a bit scary. But I think the bigger things that have been interesting is around data. So we've been on at Citizens Advice been a bit of data maturity journey, and I think nationally Citizens Advice have done some great work in terms of highlighting the cost of living crisis through data, but locally I think offices, I think charities across the sector really are realizing that data is super important and it shouldn't just be something that we give to funders for a pat on the back. So I think that's been kind of the thing that we've been focused on. And just one before I let the other speakers jump in, it's been interesting. I've done some work with Citizens Advice Scotland around, we did some work last year around chatbots and the opportunity of chatbots. And initially with chatbots, I was really excited about the potential, and then the reality kicked in about the limitations. But then suddenly, obviously, Chat GPT has hit the airwaves, and suddenly everyone's really energized again about the potential of kind of with OpenAI of what chatbots could mean for the sector. So yes, it's been pretty exciting, as well as challenging.
Brilliant, thank you, Stu. Yeah, a lot of the stuff you just touched on there kind of reflects on me how it's like so much of your own personality is wrapped up in some weird platform that's now owned by an eccentric billionaire. It's kind of terrifying. So yeah, there's a lot of my own reflections on that. It'd be interesting as well, I think, in some of the stuff you've spoken about AI, to think, I guess, where everyone in the room, is that on your radar? Where is it offering benefits at the moment? What are your plans on that? It'd be really interesting to explore some of that. Right, we're going to hear from Thiago Carmois now at Passion for Social.
Good morning, everyone. As Ross said, I'm Thiago, Managing Director of Passion for Social. Just a quick introduction about Passion for Social. We are a creative agency, but also a social enterprise. And our mission is to create employment opportunities for disabled people and people with disadvantaged backgrounds. And because of our, I'm telling this because of our mission, we have been employing disabled people since our inception in 2018. And we have always been working with web design, graphic design, and social media. And in the second year of our journey, we were invited by the Scottish Parliament to start auditing their websites in regards to accessibility. And since then, we have been investing in the process to create more effective accessibility tests. And one of the things that changed for us this year was exactly in this field, because we noticed that there were a lot of how could I say, it's more like a ignorance in the sense of not knowing. So people didn't know about accessibility or what how it exists in regards to the digital field. So when you talk about accessibility, most of people just think about ramps or how I'm going to make some put lifts in my office and things like that. And when we think about digital accessibility, it's much broader about that. So we start thinking about how to recruit better, how to do a better marketing, and of course, how to present your information, your materials, your cause using accessible information or accessible presentations. And this also happened in social media. So at the moment that we noticed that accessibility was also effective for social media, we started getting more engagement and getting more people crossing over our platforms. So one of the lessons that we had this year was exactly to go across the general public, presenting accessibility, especially for charities, that we can get a broader range of audiences. And there are some certain other tools that we also used to get that. Was using ebooks and square images, then we could turn around the algorithms in social media that we found there. So those are the lessons that we had this year, and we consider very big wins. That's it, Ross.
Thanks very much, Thiago. That was really interesting. I'm sure there'll be loads of questions actually in the room around accessibility and where people have made changes, but where people are still kind of fumbling their way through it a wee bit more. Right, Alice, we'll hear from you next at the Wildlife Trusts.
Yeah, hello. So I work for the Wildlife Trusts. In fact, I work for the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts, which is the central body of 46 charities that make up the Wildlife Trust Federation. So like about 15% of charities, we're a federated structure, which is interesting in many ways. So this has been a year of working together, I think has been a really key feature in two kind of key domains. One, it's not been the greatest year for the government protecting nature, to put it very mildly. So I think coming together to campaign on what's been defend nature has been really key. And we've taken a number of different approaches that we'd never have done before, kind of collectively at scale, getting messages out there, trying to work together to get people on board and get people working with us. So things like sending a postcard to your MP rather than sending them a generic letter. And it's been amazing seeing how kind of detailed those responses are that are coming back in. We can see them on the back end, and looking at people's passion for nature gives us some hope, aside from anything else, that actually people do understand, they do want to make a difference, and they know the importance of it. So Defend Nature has been really critical, and kind of got slightly caught in some of that like social media stuff that's been going on. It has been interesting to start to really think about which channels are really valuable for us, because I don't think we can rely totally on any of the kind of big tech ones, and that's a discussion we haven't bottomed out. I'd be really interested in people's thoughts. It feels like there's something around more kind of decentralized social media coming up, and how does that work? And as a federated structure, that's quite interesting to me. Do we already have a model that works? So Defend Nature has been a really big thing this year for us. The other side is actually to kind of flip to the more positive, has been the like bring nature back bit of the year, because it's also been a huge year for kind of rewilding projects. You know, the bison in Kent that had a baby bison, it's really cute. Beavers, including one that went into a pub. So there's, you know, we're starting to see that. I have no pun. There's like, that feels like the start of a joke. It's not. This is also the year in which I have been able to sit through meetings where people talk through about beavers all the time, and I keep a straight face like a mature adult. Anyway, I wasn't going to say that, but that's a genuine win for me. But Bring Nature Back has been really interesting, because it's also been about how we monitor that. How do we see our impact at scale? Because, you know, people and wildlife and habitats cross administrative borders, as we all know. So effectively, it's been really interesting looking at the kind of advances in land management technology, and like how we use Internet of Things, how we track stuff. Those bison are very extensively tracked. We've got beaver cams, got really interesting stuff going on to see how rewilding is really impacting. And the big win, I'm just going to say it straight off the front, is we have our first ever Wildlife Trust shared geo portal. And that is really exciting, especially if you like maps. But it is brilliant because we can actually start to see our impact at scale. We can share templates with each other. This sounds like, of course you can do that, but this is the first time we've really started to come together, and it's kind of coming from both sides of there's huge opportunities, but there's massive risks. So how do we collectively do that? So really interesting to hear what everyone else has been doing this year. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alice. I have never heard anyone in the Zoom call mention the word beaver so many times. So that's a first for me. John, any thoughts?
There's absolutely loads there. I mean, I guess I was thinking, because I was starting to like tap a wee note and chat about some of the things that are coming up, and there's so many. So what I wondered about was if we could use chat for all of us. So like, you know, the thing we do sometimes where type in chat, don't hit enter until I say go. So I'm going to do that for 2 questions. So the first question is going to be, what's the most interesting change you've seen in digital or tech kind of out there externally this year? So like some of our speakers have already touched on a few really interesting themes around social media becoming quite fragile and at risk, or cost of living, or all of those things. So this is the first question. So in chat, I'll type the question in chat so that it's in front of everyone. What's the biggest change we've seen in 2022? So what I'd like you to do is start typing. Don't hit enter just yet, because what that means is then everybody's answer comes in together, and then we can pick a few out and get a wee discussion going. I just want to make sure, you know, we're all chipping in thoughts. So it could be anything at all. It could be something that's very close to the work that you do, or it could be something that just strikes you in terms of the way you lead your life, or maybe something that affects people that you work with. So everybody had a chance to type something in. Okay. Right, so hit enter then, go for it. Some people are going already. Okay, lovely. So we're getting loads there. So I'll let other people type stuff in. So some really good themes on hybrid and using mixed meeting formats, and quite a bit on AI and ChatGPT. Okay, great. So those will keep coming in, but maybe should we start with AI and ChatGPT? I guess that's the kind of most recent thing. A question I was going to put back to speakers, I suppose, is a really good quote I read on this was about the problem with AI is not how good it is, but how bad it can be. So everybody gets excited about the idea that there's going to be this single giant intelligence that's going to capture us all and use us for feedstock. But actually, the problem with AI is it looks great, but unless the inputs are good, it can make some very flawed conclusions. I guess that's a thing that's been around for a while. And I wondered if anybody is using data that's a bit related to this, I guess, because it's like you can create a picture that looks very compelling, but there are challenges around stuff there. Alice, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because it's been really fascinating looking at this, because one of the issues we have in the Wildlife Trust is kind of siloed data. And looking at the kind of chat stuff, you can ask it a question, it gives you a credible answer. But because our data is often kept, it's not open access. So that kind of chat GPT can't find it. So something interesting there about just because something's a blank on the map doesn't mean there's nothing there kind of approach, to go back to the mapping metaphor. I think that's been quite interesting. Is this something that we should look to make more of our data open? So we kind of feed the bots. Do we have our own internal one? And the other thing, say I put it in the chat, but basically having used it, I was like, wow, it does code. That's really interesting. Brilliant, saves me loads of time. You try and do it and it just makes stuff up, and then you're like, oh right, okay, I've got to step 3 and that's not a real function. Brilliant. So I would definitely say it looks more credible sometimes than it actually is.
So like a bit of a blagger might be telling you stories down the pub that turn out to be a bit not so true. Any other thoughts from Stu, Thiago?
I mean, I think for me, having kind of dipped my toes in the chatbot waters a couple of years ago, it is very easy to make something look good, but then the reality of it, when you put it into practice, when it's the real world, is difficult. And we found with particularly with advice, it was really hard. So even though when we were developing it, we were thinking of it being quite limited, quite like an FAQ bot, but even then it's challenging because you're relying on the input as well of the user, and often within advice, clients don't really know what their issue is sometimes. So they might think they've got a housing issue, actually it's a benefit issue or a debt issue, and it's actually a family issue. So with chatbots, I mean at the moment with ChatGPT, it does look really impressive, but again, I think it's finding the use case that works for it at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think something as open as, you know, replacing humans, I don't think we're anywhere near that at the moment. I think some of the stuff around data wrangling that it does looks quite interesting. But in terms of it providing, you know, advice for people on a website, I don't think we're there, because it'd cause more harm than it would help.
Yeah, cool. Thiago, do you want to come in on that? And then I've got a hand from Peter.
Yeah, well, we have installed some chatbots for some clients because when we do the website, and there's a trick thing about chatbots that's completely about budget. So the more budget you have, the better is the chatbot. So and usually when we take our reality in the third sector, it's not like we are spending money on chatbots to get these done. So it's a kind of a catch-22 there, because when you have one or more people just dedicated for the chatbot, it really can improve a lot the response to the audience. But at the same time, we don't have this workforce to be dedicated to the chatbot, so it's really hard to say the effectiveness about chatbots in general. And sometimes just a FAQ section on the website or any other part of your communication is much more efficient than the chatbot itself. So I'm in with the other ones.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to come in with your question or comment?
Unmute, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that I'm involved in a project in Edinburgh University, the EVE 2 project, which is research into COVID. And they're working on now on patients that are returning to hospital. And they use artificial intelligence, which is went to machine learning, then into deep learning. And their research, I mean, they have an awful lot of money for this research. And some of the data they built up and the models have built up are absolutely amazing. And they're getting fantastic results for us. They can pinpoint areas, people, the age, deprivation index, things like that. So they're using artificial intelligence and they're getting absolutely fantastic results. So that's just my input.
Thanks, Peter. Really good one. I'm just looking down the chat and I'm seeing like hybrid's quite a theme, but one other really interesting thing I think was from Claire G, and you were talking about people being creative and not just doing digital. I wondered if you wanted to say any more about that, Claire, or if speakers want to pick up on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, I think that's the role I'm in. I'm sat in our culture and inclusion team. So my focus and my role is about people, but it's not something that we've thought about a lot as an organization. We've got digital teams who are really focused on, you know, our fundraising platforms and all the kind of like tech and infrastructure and like all of that. But like, we've not really talked about like where our strength is in our people and how we kind of connect that. And I've been trying to kind of articulate, what do we mean by digital? And for me, it's that space between people and the tools and technology. And it's where they can find the right solutions to the ways that we want to work. And it's not about, let's, you know, get in this new platform, let's do this new way of working because we've seen somebody else do it, but understanding where the value is for us and being brave enough to say, actually, digital's not the solution here. Actually, we want to get in front of young people and we want to connect with them. We want to build relationship and kind of making sure that digital sits in the right place in that space. And for us as an organization, that's been a really new conversation this year. And it's been really positive that it's been received really well.
Great, thank you. That's such an interesting theme because I guess loads of organizations, we all had that big push into digital in March 2020, and now we're back into a place of choosing it and looking at it in a more holistic way. So thank you for bringing that point. Did any of our speakers want to chip in on that one at all?
There's lots of thumbs up there as Claire was speaking. I think Lisa had a point.
At least they go for it.
It was just, actually just to kind of reflect that the need for hybrid working. A lot of people are kind of saying, hybrid is actually most beneficial. And we're at Crew, we're not a digital organization. We use digital kind of ways to get information out to people via social media and download our resources, etc. But of course, on the drop-in side, where I work, if we have people coming in, people can text chat to us. They can do things. We don't have the resources to be able to kind of have a chat bot to respond, but I personally wouldn't have the confidence that the person is going to get the right response because of the complexities, of course, of the engagement that we get. We just never know what people are going to come in with. And still, I think over the last couple of years, even with COVID, the vast majority of people, it's like 85 plus 90% of people who have engaged with our drop-in services have come in. They've either phoned or they've walked into Coburn Street, and we're constantly offering new ways of being able to engage with us. And people do use those, but most people want to come in, and quite a lot of people who are coming in to try and get more services like our counselling or whatnot had been with other services who were using more digital kind of means. And especially through COVID, when mental health was starting to be really chipped away and cracked at, most people want face-to-face services now. So yeah, I think it was just to kind of mention that also as well, about creativity. We've been trying to recruit a digital youth worker for it's almost a year now. We've had like 3 or 4 rounds of recruitment for it, and it's been really interesting. In the beginning, we termed it something like digital development, but with an idea that this is specifically working with young people to increase kind of digital literacy, to be able to use creativity with digital tools, with our resources, all sorts of things. But at the beginning, we found it was a lot of people who were like, yes, I'm a programmer, but they didn't have any youth work experience. Yes. And so we were then changing the title of it. And it's been quite interesting after a few rounds. We're really hopeful this round is going to be the successful one. But so far, we seem to find it quite difficult to find the right people who, and we know that they're there because there's a lot of youth workers who use digital platforms as part of their palette of tools really effectively, but it hasn't been kind of getting through to people. It's either like great loads of youth work experience and I have a personal Twitter account or something, but there didn't seem to be kind of a connection to, yeah, we can use this as ways to engage around this, or it seemed really quite difficult. So yeah, it was just kind of interesting to note for us that didn't seem to kind of like fall in the right places yet. It will, obviously.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, where there's a total recruitment crisis around digital in the third sector at the moment, where the skills are not embedded in the mainstream workforce. And then when you try and recruit a specialist, you can't compete in the salary. Like there was a Scottish Government service designer role at the moment. Junior service designer getting paid more than most charity chief execs I know in Scotland. How can the charity sector recruit people when that's what they're competing against? So it's really tricky. Claire, you're going to come in on that one.
Yeah, really, just to kind of reflect on Lisa's point there. So one of the things we've had a challenge with is how do we upskill our practitioners in digital capabilities? What does that actually look like in terms of what do practitioners need in that digital space? And we kind of came to a place where actually what they need is resilience. They need the bravery to embrace, because exactly as you say, lots of youth workers do use these platforms, but they change so fast, and young people are always a step ahead. And so there's a kind of fear there of like, not wanting to look uncool, or like, not be down with kids, what they're doing, like, and it's really hard to keep up. And so practitioners are feeling that kind of pressure of like, okay, so I get these tools, but what's coming next down the line? And actually the resilient mindset and headspace to be able to say, like, I'm capable of embracing the new and learning about it and understanding, the settings and where the risks and opportunities are with these new platforms is something that we've actually ended up kind of pushing harder into than specifically training specific platforms and tools, because then they're equipped for the change rather than the now.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think, yeah, it's that one of things changing so quickly, because you might have had a big Twitter strategy at one point in 2022, you might be rethinking that one now. Or Metaverse, for example. Is anybody still in there?
It's just Mark. He's just in there on his own.
Pauline, you have made some great points about digital as a kind of enabler, and I wonder if you want to say any more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just finished a year of digital literacy with older people, and you know, it's great. They do want to be shown how to use their devices, and we're now starting with organizations. Gina, who's on the call as well, is just started working with me. I'm so over the moon to have recruited somebody with such great skills. But she and I are going to go around the different neighborhood network schemes and just getting people to not see digital as an add-on, as an alternative to what they're already offering, to complement what they're doing. It's, you know, I have a lot of time for Cara Allman, who's now working for Manchester City Council, who writes greatly about making sure just because people aren't digital, they're not excluded. And it's all, you know, it's all about that kind of piece for me. I don't know if that's making sense, John. I wasn't expecting it to be called on, so sorry. I'll come back again. But
Yeah,
I
of
hope
course.
I'm making
Yeah,
sense in the chat anyway.
it makes loads of sense. I think what you're saying in chat was about if you've got good capability in the back end systems, that gives you more time to be available.
Yeah.
Like as Lisa was saying, you know, there's maybe this desire to be like available for in-person stuff. And if
Yes,
you're using
very much so.
digital well, you've got more time potentially to do that. I was also aware, and anybody shout if you want to say anything different, there's a lot of hybrid getting mentioned in the chat, and I'm aware that probably once we start talking about hybrid, we could talk at great length about that. So I just wanted to check whether there's any other topics that are kind of coming up in people's minds before we pick that one up. Steve said automations on your list for 2023, and I wondered if you wanted to say a little bit more about that before we turn to hybrid, perhaps.
It was very much chiming in with what Pauline was saying, in that obviously with, like all our services, the cost of living crisis is having a real impact on our ability to meet demand. So we need to be more effective, and to do that, it is stripping away admin tasks or repetitive tasks. You know, can we offload those to automation to free people up to do what they want to do, which is actually helping other people. And it looks like there's obviously a lot of tools out there, like, you know, Zapier, or if this then that way, you could actually, you know, automate some very simple functions that actually do seem to take up a lot of people's time, you know, in terms of email responding and managing calendars. There's so many tasks. I think there's a real opportunity. It's just with the charity sector finding the headspace and the time to actually do that piece of work to free up that time. But it is something that we are definitely looking at for next year.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, maybe
go
ahead, Ross.
No, I was just going to say, I think it would merit having a whole DigiShift around automation, because it feels like it's an area that, you know, we could free up huge amounts of time in the sector to kind of focus on the work that people came at their job to do in the first place.
Yeah. So maybe like a new AI shouldn't stand for artificial intelligence, but it could stand for additional interns. So it's like, it's not like it's going to solve the really hard problems that you've not been able to solve yourself, but it can give you capacity on lower level stuff so that you've got time for the expert stuff with real people. Yeah.
I can give you an example yesterday of a thing where I had to fill out a form for charity. The form was on their website. Then someone manually emailed me and said, you need to fill out this form. And it was almost identical apart from 2 questions. And the form came in this bonkers like Word document with lots of little boxes in it that I then had to try and fill out on a mobile phone. And then I sent it back. And now I sent it back, I have no idea what happens next.
Yeah.
And it's like there's just so much, like, automation could probably save that person, like, you know, a day a week easily.
Yeah.
Thiago was going to come and he's probably got some more sensible to say than I do.
I don't know if it's so sensible, but I would say that there is some things that we also do some automation processes, especially when we talk about marketing and the audience interaction. But most of the times that we deliver this type of services to clients, the clients they don't have the process very clear in their minds. So I think before going to automation is trying to optimize the processes. That's I would say that the first thing that I would suggest to do, especially because, for example, we are a 100% remote organization. Obviously, because of disabled people, because of mobility and so on. So we we before COVID, we set up the company to be remote, and all the automations that we generated were in regards to Asana. So to use Asana, it's a project management tool. We had to create processes, and it only works because the process is very well designed and well developed, and then we can start thinking about automation. So every time someone finishes a task, the other one is notified by this task and say, okay, now you can work on this and you can work on that. Someone receives an email if they can't access Asana. So this makes the work much easier, and then you don't have to spend so much time talking to each other, and then you can focus on the mission that you have to deliver. So I think it's mostly my insight from what you're saying.
That sounds really interesting, Thiago, because I guess to work well remotely, you got to have that intention and like think beyond your own desk. And we had quite a good DigiShift earlier this year from Marissa Goldberg from Remotely Interesting, and she was talking about multi-time zone teams and talking about the power of front loading. So like saying, if I want Ross to do something, which I sometimes do, I tell him all the things he needs. So I don't sort of say, hey Ross, I was thinking about this, in a way that you might do in a physical office, because you think, well, I'll just start chatting to Ross. But the front loading is like you're saying, here's all the information you need to run with this. And I think that's a really powerful tool. Yeah.
I'm sorry, John. It's exactly that. I think one of the other things that we learned as well was about creating a documentation about everything that we do. Yeah. Because most of the things that we spend a lot of time is explaining other people how to do things. Yeah. And then you have turnovers. So we start creating documentations that could be a self-paced learning system that everyone that when it's getting a new role or a new action, they have some documentation that they can follow. So the more we can engage repetitive tasks like these, we do. So using Asana to document the steps, to document the actions, the tasks that we have done before, it's one of the ways as well. Sorry for interrupting, John. It's just an insight that came.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's a really good point. A really good example how it just makes the team more powerful. I guess the problem is people often don't see that trade-off and they think, I don't really want to document this, I'll remember it for next time, and then somebody else is trying to do it next time. So yeah, really good. Gina, you'd made a great point about automating some processes. I wondered if you had any wee examples of some of the stuff you've been doing. Sorry, I'm kind of calling straight out of chat.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No problem.
Just showing my face a little bit. Sorry,
Nice to see you.
Who's talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used Power Automate, for example. If people are submitting requests through forms, Microsoft Forms, for example, you want to send them materials like some documents and things. Reports, for example, automatically. I used Power Automate to do that a lot, and it really saves a lot of time rather than just sending attaching these reports that people are requesting all the time. Doing that manually. Now I can just automate it, and then I don't have to. It really frees up a lot of my time doing that, and also just sending automatic replies. And even like when I'm sending newsletters, for example, I can use Power Automate to also schedule that, or do certain things to automate that process. So yeah, I think automating process is really the way forward to free up our time to do other things rather than doing things manually.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because I think sometimes in some sectors we talk about automating, that means there's going to be 10% of the staff left, and actually I think in the voluntary sector we know that what we're working on is so persistent that if we've got more efficiency, we've got more capability to bring to bear on problems. So it's really helpful. Cool. Any other things in chat? I know we've mentioned so Steve said you're looking at other things there, but we sort of said hybrid, and we sort of said a lot of people are using it now. I guess the thing we might be thinking is anybody finding it's working really well, or are there any particular challenges that are coming up? Because I suppose, from my perspective anyway, hybrid like promises the best of both worlds, but it sometimes delivers the worst. Like, let's take Ross and Maddie, for example, are sort of their hybrid element of DigiShift this morning. But they both had to travel into an office to get there. So yeah, any other thoughts on hybrid? I can see Alice, was that a way from you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is something I think, like everyone else, I think the Wildlife Trust went very quickly into kind of COVID issues, but obviously we have loads of people out on reserves. So hybrid has been quite interesting in the specific models that we tend to have of, like, there are people working where there is no signals for anything. So it's kind of, how do we engage those people? Because actually digital technology can be really valuable for what they're doing, but how do you get people who are kind of out on reserves, or even in some of our shops, like involved in what becomes hybrid meetings, which isn't really necessarily a new problem, but it's more of a problem now. More people can easily engage with that. But I think we definitely haven't, we're getting there, but I don't think we've cracked it. There's training that's been going on recently about, like, how to run hybrid meetings effectively, for example, which I think is possibly quite late on in doing it, but definitely really needed. And it's good that that's rolling out. Actually, I think that's been valuable, but we still have those people who are not hybrid, as in they can't engage with digital kind of town halls or kind of our intranet or anything like that at all, and that's still a big issue, I think.
Yeah, because I presume you got site-based staff who can't sit behind a desk and pop a headset on. They're maybe running around the landscape. Yeah. Cool. Stu, you've got a hand?
Yeah, just the same as Alice. I just don't think we've got hybrid right yet. I think we just kind of muddled our way into hybrid working post-COVID, and with the advice sector, we do, like Lisa, we obviously do a lot of stuff face-to-face, but we also do telephone and digital. What's been interesting with recruitment challenges is the face-to-face only offer is harder to recruit for. People now kind of are expecting that element of flexibility, which is harder to offer when primary part of their role will be that face-to-face provision. So I think that's been a challenge. But I think one of the hardest things, I think, coming out of COVID has been onboarding new people and making them feel part of an organization when they're not in often. And it is strange now, that mindset change of asking somebody to come into the office and they're saying, well, it's going to take me 40 minutes to get into the office. And in the mind, you're thinking, well, we used to do that 5 days a week, 2 years ago. But now people's minds have changed, and it just seems a bit of a chore to make that journey.
Yeah, that's a good one, because it's like, you need to think about your day and also what else is in your calendar. Like, you don't want to be in a situation of having a nice time in an office but having 4 or 5 video calls to get through, because that doesn't make you a very sociable person. Yeah. Any other thoughts on hybrid at all? I'm just checking chat.
I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm just gonna come in. Something for us, it's really key for us in SCVO at the moment. Hybrid is a real issue, particularly for our events team, who are, well, they want, if we're going to do it, they want to make sure that we do it right and we do it well. And there doesn't seem to be enough tech out there to do it well and to get it right. So we're really struggling with that. And when it comes to hybrid office, again, the room that me and Ross are in is currently set up. It's one of our Zoom rooms at SCVO. However, we opted for the laptop, because when I've tried to do it from a Zoom room before, the sound quality wasn't quite right, or it's just not set up to do something like this. And it worked fine before the pandemic, but now we know that things can work better. So we're kind of in that real middle stage of, we know it doesn't quite work, but it doesn't quite do what we want it to do. But does that thing actually exist yet, or have we found it, or is it too expensive? So these are questions that we're asking. And just on the onboarding, I completely agree with you, Stu. That's been really difficult, I think, for all of us. One of the things that we've started to do in SCVO is we're doing what's called micro team building. And just within the team that John and I are in, the support services team, we are, when we're having our regular meetings with, I think that'll be 6 weeks. That shows you how often I do my best to get to them. I've always got a clash. I think that John will be able to tell that every 6 weeks, whatever. Something as simple as setting our Zoom backgrounds or our team backgrounds to a favorite place, or our favorite album, or our favorite animal, and just spending the first couple of minutes chatting about that picture, or what we've put there. And something that worked incredibly well for us just before Christmas is one of our newest colleagues. I had got our Spotify all wrapped up list, and she asked us all, what's the tune that we've all been listening to this year that has got us through the year? And she's made an SCVO Spotify list for us all. So we all just posted our tunes and we were all chatting about it. So it just gave us that option. It's something that we would have talked about in our offices, but we were all talking about this in teams, and it worked really, really well. And that's been a kind of a new thing for us this year, is to try and embrace this micro team building and doing it differently.
Yeah. I'll get Claire in a wee second. I just want to pick up on that. I guess I think one of the challenges with video meetings is in smaller groups, it feels like it gets quite transactional. You get straight to the business because you're like, well, sound might cut out, or I've got another 4 of these later, so let's just get straight to the point. But that in a physical office, you wouldn't come straight up to people and launch straight into your task of the day. You might ask what they did at the weekend, or ask if they want a cup of tea. We need to find ways of doing that online. And the other quick thing I just wanted to say with hybrid is, I think one of the challenges is technically it feels very affordable with quite a basic kit, but actually good hybrid is quite expensive in terms of kit and needs quite a lot of planning in terms of where are people sitting, what's the environment like, and all that kind of thing. Sorry for waffling. Claire, do you want to jump in?
Waffle's good, love waffle. No, I was just going to say, I love some of those ideas, Maddie. They're great. We've actually done quite a lot of work with trying to kind of actually really just directly address the meeting culture at TCS, because everybody was feeling burnt out, back-to-back meetings, and so trying to kind of help people understand some of the settings and things that are actually available to them. So turning notifications off so you can be more present in meetings, and using the start late function in Outlook, so everything defaults to starting 5 minutes after the hour, which means that everybody gets a break between meetings and you're not straight from one into the other. We're in that place where we're kind of putting them out there as ideas, but we haven't yet said this is the way we want to work, so please do this. So it's not necessarily working right across the organization, and therefore the impact is kind of minimized, but we're pushing forward with it. But at its core, what that's about is being human with each other. And other things that we've talked about are make sure you make time for those check-ins, those micro team building moments, and allow yourself things that you schedule into your diary that are not project meetings, that are just what I term thinking friends. I've got a little group of people that they're just the kind of people that I want to knock ideas about with. We don't have any agenda other than let's just talk. What are you up to? What am I up to? Where can we help each other? But also I was thinking this, and what do you reckon about that? And just kind of those conversations that would have naturally happened in an office environment. Potentially we have to be more intentional about making them happen when we're in this kind of online space. But one of the other things that I've been kind of trying to make sure that we're really clear on is the difference between hybrid and flexible. Because we talk about hybrid working in a kind of, sometimes we go to the office, sometimes we sit and do everything online all day. And for me, that's not hybrid, that's flexible. That's, I'm doing one thing today, tomorrow I've chosen to do something slightly differently. Hybrid is when you've got people who are in the same space at the same time doing 2 different things. You've got some people who are present face to face and some people who've dialed in. And the challenges are very different there. There's a whole bunch of additional things to think about in terms of inclusion and making that an even playing field for collaboration, all of that kind of thing. And we were getting lost, all of that stuff was getting lost because we were talking about hybrid being today I'm online, tomorrow I'm in an office, whereas that is a different thing and has its own challenges. And so the definition is actually, for me, one of the things that is tripping us up a bit in addressing, the real needs around both sides of it.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just going to highlight a few things that are in chat because there's a lot of, we may run out of time to cover them all. So we've had a good shout out for Gather Town, which is kind of online virtual space. Ross, I think, has been popping in. Our 25th of January DigiShift will be talking about multiplied, how digital transformation can deliver more impact. I should give a health warning and say we don't always 100% agree with the word transformation because it's quite corporate-y and implies very expensive consultants doing stuff you don't understand. We're more about digital evolution and iteration, but it will be a really interesting talk because I think Ben and his colleague got some really interesting insights to share. Yeah, so thank you, Claire, for all those great points about having to kind of rethink work and do it intentionally. I think, Angela, you made a really interesting point. It's probably about 20 messages back in chat now, but about resentment between colleagues. So, and I guess it's an interesting point where at one level, you could be in an organization where, because of the kind of work you do, everybody can be flexible. So that's kind of maybe the challenge there is about how you do it intentionally and do it well. But I think there will be organizations where some people, because of their nature of their role, will need to be in a space, whether that's to meet people to do face-to-face services, or they're looking after a site or whatever it might be. And that, I guess, creates quite a different dynamic, because then, you know, those two groups of workers are maybe having quite different experiences. So any thoughts on that one?
Can I come in quickly on that, John? Just because I've been doing quite a lot of work with social care charities, and I don't think that topic's necessarily been given the respect that it deserves. I don't think it's intentional, but I think there's general, and there's a massive generalisation, but the people still having to come into a workplace are often frontline workers who are doing the hardest job in the organisation and are most poorly paid. And the people who get to work remotely and stay in their house are people who work maybe in comms or policy or senior management roles or back office functions, and who will tend to be higher paid than the frontline social care worker. So there's already that kind of like tension between someone who's maybe delivering a local authority contract on close to minimum wage versus someone who's maybe getting paid double the amount. So there's a tension there already, and then you can add that layer on. If I've got to pay to commute to my work and get up 2 hours earlier than you,
yeah,
I think there's maybe just a wee bit more work needs to be done in the third sector about the tension that brings to workplace culture and what that means for your staff.
Yeah, and I guess, like, is that part of the problem? I guess is it's not like an organization's made a big strategic decision of we'll take these roles and enable them to be remote and these ones won't. It's sort of happening in an organic way, but then people are like reading that as I'm just thinking of, you know, historically you might have had an organization with 2 offices, and one might be the kind of fun, easy to get to office, and the other one might be the one that nobody particularly wants to go to because it's harder to get to, or it's not as warm, or whatever it might be. And you've maybe got that situation of a kind of 2-speed organization, really challenging. A couple of people have flagged, you know, these are issues they've seen. Has anybody any thoughts on kind of strategies or tactics to alleviate this? I'm not imagining anybody's got a kind of brilliant, complete solution, but I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts.
I don't know if Pam wants to come in, but Pam, Mary just pointed out in the chat about actually losing a member of staff because of this. And I don't know if you're comfortable sharing it, Pam, but if you are, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a frontline job role. And since COVID, it's almost like there's an expectation that they should be able to work from home when the job requires you to be face-to-face with the client. And just that tension and expectation from the frontline worker is being challenged when she sees other staff members that are not in a face-to-face role being able to work from home. And just exactly what you were saying, that tension that's created between those that get and those that don't.
Yeah.
And she's moved to a job that, quote, gives her more flexibility. So yeah.
An interesting stat I saw the other day was 14% of roles advertised on LinkedIn are remote or flexible, but over 50% of job applications on LinkedIn are for those 14% of jobs. So that's quite interesting in that across the market, it's still a relatively small proportion, less than a quarter, that are like remote or fully flexible, but yet there's a very high level of interest in them. And I think it is challenging, because if what you need to do as an organization is provide a service in person, you can't really get around that. You've got to kind of say, well, that's what we're needing to do here. So challenging.
I wonder about Anton's point there. I thought Mary just picked up on that about classifying at different levels of hybrid working. Interesting to know how that's categorized. I don't know if you're comfortable coming in that one, Anton.
Sorry, the council had a fairly. I work for a local authority, and obviously there was a big shift to like a big mass of the council moving online very quickly as the pandemic kicked out. But then the council sort of decided to sort of to formalize that bit more and try and like put it down as different work groups, and essentially everyone went through a process where there was a bit of toing and froing. Line managers could speak to people individually. They would say, well, we think you're this level, right, based on a series of role descriptors that were put in place based on a job type. But there was some, they allowed some feedback from individual sort of team members before the final decisions were made. So, for example, we have teachers, adult learners. They are fundamentally, that work's gone back to face, and they were referred to as mobile workers, where it was clearly said, well, look, this is a front-facing role for this part of your job. But for example, if you've got a class in the morning and a class in the evening, we're prepared to allow you to work flexibly in the gap in the middle, rather than having to travel back to an office. You could potentially work from home or work at another centre. So it seemed pretty fair, and that people could challenge an initial decision, and that could be worked through, and then it was agreed. Because I did agree with the point that I think it's becoming more of an employment consideration when you're interviewing, particularly if maybe the labour market's quite tight.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so I think Stu said in chat as well, there's all kinds of pressure on the labour market and pressure on wages, so it gets really difficult if you got, if there's only a finite number of people that can do the jobs we need to do. So it's about thinking about what that looks like. We're getting near the end of the time now, so we wondered, I'm going to give speakers a little bit of time so they're not like kind of jump straight on it, but what we might do is think, if you've got a prediction or guess for 2023, if you want to have a little think about that. It's been a really interesting mix of themes this time. We weren't quite sure, where would the conversation go this month, but it's been so interesting to go from AI to hybrid working to Twitter. We didn't talk about Twitter that much. I thought we might talk loads, but I guess we're all waiting to see what happens next. So it's been a really interesting discussion, and I'm really glad for all the contributions from all of you. So what maybe we could do now is, if our speakers have got a prediction or guess either about digital in general, if you're feeling quite ambitious, but if you want to be a kind of fortune teller about the future, or maybe just within your own context and organization, what do you think might become quite big and interesting in 2023?
I can go.
Please, yeah.
These are always terrible, because whatever I say is going to be absolutely rubbish by the time it's like 2 months in. So I mean, one of my predictions would probably be, I feel like Twitter is just going to stop working. I don't know about anyone else.
Yeah.
It's just gradually slowing down. It's getting worse. It's getting full of toxicity in a way it wasn't. And I kind of hope that means that Elon Musk goes bust, and then someone else buys it and makes it back into something that people might actually want to use. So that's kind of my big prediction, that it's probably going to be totally wrong. For the Wildlife Trust movement, I think continuing to work together and work with partners. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up about how we make the most of our data, and so it'd be really interesting. I think that's going to be a bit of a game changer for us if we can get all that working together. So that's kind of the two sides, and I hope that one does come true, because that would be great for us.
Wonderful. I've got a hand from Lisa, so Lisa, I'll take that before we go to our next.
I just wanted to ask if anybody had any more information or thoughts about deepfakes and what we should be thinking around maybe protection of vulnerable people, or how deepfakes can be used. They can be used in really comedic ways. I'm sure people have seen some really funny things done with deepfakes, but they're getting so realistic. So I just wondered about that.
That is a really good one. I'm wondering if maybe part of that, I think it was it Claire who talked about having not like a particular narrow skill set on exactly the technology, but like a general awareness, and it's maybe like a bit of a kind of adding on to misinformation training. So you might already have training which is about helping people see what's credible and what's not online. So it's maybe a kind of adding that theme to it and saying, not everything, particularly if something looks like a video and it's totally outrageous, it's possible it might not be real, but pretty difficult, I think. Any other speaker predictions or guesses or things that are coming next?
I'll jump in. I think I agree. I think how this prediction might come true, because obviously Tesla's stock's not doing too well, so Elon might need to cash out. The worry will be who would buy it, whether he could, whether it is possible to get somebody worse than Elon Musk to buy it. In terms of predictions, it was interesting Lisa said that, because I do worry about fakes and scams. That scams obviously is already a big issue, but as technology gets more with AI, as it gets easier and easier to do these scams, that the people who are most vulnerable are usually the ones who are targeted. So that's a worry for 2023. And I think organisationally, I think for us it is about, as a federated charity, I think it is using the power of digital to work better together as a collective, and really harness the power of federated networks rather than working as 200 separate charities. Try to work as one in delivering better solutions.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Thiago. You're about to hop off, but really lovely to have you join us. And also, Katia, thanks for your good wishes. We're running right up to 11, so I know for some people that means got to jump to something else. But it's been really wonderful to have all of you and have this great discussion. I don't know if we want to wrap up, so just our quick reminder, 25th of Jan, 10 o'clock, digital transformation. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful break. Okay.
Thanks, John. Can I just say that
Yes,
I think
please do.
DigiShift has been magnificent. You have run some brilliant topics. I love it. I love coming to it. I'm delighted to be here with Gina today. It's been just a game changer for me, really, for work. So thanks very much for everything you've done.
Thanks, Pauline. That's lovely to hear. Thanks very much.
Lovely, Pauline. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay. We'll maybe stop recording now. We need to go and put our Christmas jumpers on, but thank you so much. And thanks to our speakers for making the time. It was really generous to hear your insights, and wish you all the best. I'm going to hit stop now.